Coach, you've hit the ground running. A lot of time spent on the road recruiting. And I guess getting to know your current roster.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the first few months?
Oh, it's been a whirlwind for sure. Obviously getting in December, I call it Portal Palooza. That's what it feels like at times. But we feel like the four guys that we brought in December have all been great additions through the winter workouts. It's always challenging probably when you're coming into a new situation to get acclimated to the program as well as the people, but those guys have done a great job with that. Really excited about working with those four guys, and then the guys that were on the roster already, just getting to know them. And I had some baseline relationships with a few of those guys through the recruiting process. But now, actually having time to spend with them, which really didn't occur until February, because, December we got here, they were leaving campus. When they got back in January, I was leaving campus, for 3 weeks on the road recruiting. So the best thing that we did, though, during that time period, Coach Norvell, we would do mat drills on Fridays. And so you'd be on the road recruiting all week, get back on campus on Fridays, and actually had time to spend with your players, which was awesome, just to get to see those guys move around a little bit, see what they're like, competitively, the whole deal. And then, once we got done, when we were on the road, then getting back here and having opportunities with walkthroughs and meeting times to do some installs. And now you're starting to really learn about, where each guy is at from a developmental standpoint. It's been great. It's gone by fast. I look back on it now, and I've been here, I guess now, almost 3.5, 4 months almost, and it's gone by really fast, which is because we've been moving and shaking. So, yeah.
The fact you get more time with the players, you're allowed to have one-on-one time.
Yeah. With the meetings and the walkthrough times that we have, we're still limited just from an NCAA standpoint, but you get 2 hours a week with them in meetings and walkthroughs, and those have been invaluable, when it comes to installation, and then again, just kind of learning more about each guy and where they're at in the developmental process, so that's been really, like I said, those have been invaluable. And then, the mat drill stuff, that's where we're out there and really straining guys and challenging them. You're challenging them, from a physical standpoint as well as from just that mental toughness standpoint of it. That was a grind for those guys, and they handled it like champs. They got after it every day, and you could see their growth and development even through those drills. So that was a real positive as well. But anytime that you can spend with your players. Now what I want to be able to do is, my wife and I recently got our house here. We're starting to move in, and once we get fully settled, then you can start having guys over for dinner, and you start to develop a fellowship with them that goes beyond just the football field, which that's important for all of us coaches, particularly O-line. It's such a brotherhood that you want to be able to do. I know the players have developed that fully. Like, and when I watch them interact with one another, we've got a really tight-knit group. So now it's, I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to spend some time with those guys off the field. So.
What are your early impressions of them as individuals and as a unit?
I can go through each individual guy, and we have 16 guys, but just as a group, I'll just give it as a whole group. So I don't want to leave anybody out or anything along those lines. But as a group, I've been very impressed with our veteran players. So we have 8 guys who are going into their final year of eligibility.
Yeah.
Okay, we brought 4 guys in at midterm. We talked a little bit about those guys, and then the 4 guys that were returning, that are all going into their last year as well. Okay, so you have T.J. Ferguson, you got Jacob Rizzi, you got Richie Leonard, and then you have Bryson Estes. Those 4 guys are all going into their last year as well. So if you look at our unit right now, half of our unit is going into their last year of eligibility. The other half is returning underclassmen that I'm really excited about. Those guys from where they're at from a developmental standpoint. There's some of the guys are younger. Some guys have been in the program 3 years, some guys 2 years, some guys just got here. Like Mario Nash just got here in January. He's a rookie. He's figuring things out. But as a whole, I like the mix of the group. And our veteran players, you can tell these guys have played a lot of football. Obviously, I have a long-standing experience and relationship with Adrian Medley, who I had for 4 years. We had him down there at UCF for 4 years, so I know Adrian inside and out as a young man and as a player, right? But then you add in 7 other guys who have 1 year of eligibility left, and you can see those guys have played a lot of reps. They pick things up quickly and process fast. So that part of it's exciting. The younger players, the mix of the younger players, I like the way it's broken down from a class standpoint. And we still have, 3 other signees that are still coming in. Mario's the only early enrolled signee. There's 3 other guys that will be in his class that will be added to the mix here in May or June, whenever they get here. But the breakdown of those classes, I feel, is pretty balanced. You know what I mean? We're a little bit top heavy in the fact that you have 8 guys who are going into their last year. So we've got to work on that dynamic as we go forward in recruiting. But in terms of the unit itself, I like where we're at. Of course, we haven't put any pads on yet either, so we got to get out there and put some pads on and get some real work in. We've done a lot of work to this point. Most of it's been mental work, rather than the physical pounding of it. We haven't been able to do any of that. So once we put it all together, I'll have a better feel for it. But I like where we're at right now.
Talking about like the young guys that you came in, maybe the underclassmen who are a little bit further away from playing and like have a developmental plan, did you really like reconsider how their process is going to be, how their process is going to look as they get ready to play over the next few years? Being a new coach, guys like Lucas Simmons, guys like, Otto played last year, but those guys, did you really just kind of recalibrate, just we're starting fresh, I'm a new coach, or is it sort of a little bit of carryover?
Building on what they have from an experience standpoint, and guys are at different spots.
Yeah.
Lucas has been here, Andre's been here, Jalen Early has been here. Jalen was a guy that really all 3 of those guys I recruited out of high school. So I had a baseline relationship with all 3 of those guys. But those guys have played a lot of reps. And here's the thing, like, you can go on the game field. There's nothing like game reps,
right?
Okay, but you can tell when a guy's taken 1,000 reps or more in practice. You know what I mean? These guys have been coached. Okay, so they're not like high school players that are just coming out. And those are guys where you're at a baseline where you're like, okay, let me see where this dude's at. Now, you're always evaluating where guys are at, even those younger guys. Jonathan Daniels, right? I think he's got tremendous upside. Manasseh got tremendous upside. Okay, so we have some really good young players, as well as guys that are kind of mid-experienced guys like Jalen, Otto, Lucas. This is going to be a really big spring for Lucas. He's going to have a great opportunity this spring to put some good stuff on film. And then you have all the veteran guys. So there's a really good mix in there. But there are, there's different levels at where they've been coached to at this point, like you could tell. And when it really shows up and when it comes to processing, You know what I mean? And when the defense changes right before the snap, you know, veteran guys have a tendency to be able to handle that stuff because they've seen it over and over and over again, you know. And so hopefully by the end of spring, we'll have everybody, you know, kind of at that veteran level, if you will. So,
and I know the last coach, the big thing was cross training. How do you feel about that? I know every O-line coach is a little different on it. How do you feel about that? Is there any specific center to tackle, center to guard, like any, or are you just flexible with it?
Yeah, and Alex has done a great job.
Right.
Okay, and he's a really good football coach and a good friend of mine, and so he and I have talked about the cross training stuff in the past before. I think that as an O-line coach, okay, your job is to make sure that your 5 best players are always on the field.
Right.
Who's available, right? So you have your 5 starters. Well, let's say that, let's just use it as an example. You got your right tackle, and you got your dude that's maybe taking a majority of the reps in practice at second team right tackle. But if your second team right tackle is your 10th best offensive lineman overall, okay, and the right tackle gets dinged up or has to come out for a series or maybe a quarter, whatever it is, and it doesn't make sense that you would take your 10th best guy and put him on the field and your 6th best guy is standing there watching. So you always have to have contingency plans in place. Now, what it takes to be able to do that is you have to have some versatility from a player standpoint, okay, from a skill set standpoint. Guys, you know, you don't want to, you're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole type deal. So the guy has to have some versatility with it. Generally speaking, you want to have experienced players that have the ability to do that. So what we'll do as we go through the course of spring is try to identify the players who can handle that from a physical standpoint, right, from a skill set standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint, you know, like, because that's challenging,
it's a lot.
you know. And so whenever we bring in a young player, right, you want to give a guy a home base. Like, this is your spot where you're going to start at, okay? And then eventually you say, hey, today in practice, I'm going to get you some reps. Instead of at right guard, you're going to rep at left guard, or you're going to rep from right guard, I'm going to rep you at right tackle today, just to get them some. And it might even be just install period reps, whatever it is, you know. During quarterback center exchange, you know, anybody that can snap the ball, you send them to CQ so that they can get work snapping it.
Right.
They may never take a rep in practice, you know, for 2 or 3 weeks at center, but they've been snapping, you know, so from day one. So all those things you have to factor in because, like I said, you know, my job is to make sure that we have the 5 best players on the field at all times. When you have guys that have versatility, it gives you the ability to juggle that. But it also, you don't ever want to get to where a player it becomes a jack of all trades, a master of none. You know what I mean? So that's why you give them a home base, and then you try to develop them accordingly. A lot of times it's with the more experienced players that are able to do that.
I know you talked a lot, like inside zone kind of being your bread and butter a little bit.
Yes.
What about in pass protection? Like, what type of sets do you sort of lean towards? Is that something you're willing to, like, personalize to the player? Do you care if the left and right tackle are? Well,
no. So when we start talking about pass protections, okay, there's 2 different areas there, right? You have schematic concerns or schematic philosophy, okay, and then you have individual technique and fundamentals, okay, and how do they fit into the schemes, right? So, you know, we have 5-man drop back pass protections. We have 6-man drop back pass protections. We have some 5-man play action protections. We have some 6-man play action protections. We got 7-man play action protections.
Right.
We have some protections that we call bob slide protections, where you're big on big on one side and you're sliding, generally speaking, the center or whoever's sliding back with the center. You have some protections, there's 7-man like full slide protections. Okay, so there's a variety of protection schemes. There's sprint protections, there's nakeds, there's bootleg protections. There's there's a lot of different things that factor into it. Okay, so that's more from a schematic standpoint.
Yeah.
All right. When you start talking about specific technique and fundamentals, most people at that time, and I'm not trying to say what you were asking.
Yeah.
Me, but most people at that point are probably talking more about in drop back pass protection. What are your set angles or your set philosophies? That sort of
pure drop back. No,
so just drop back, 6-man pass protection, pocket throws,
right.
or 5-man pass protection. It's a little bit different from a technique and fundamental standpoint. But we basically work different set angles, okay, based on situations, right? So a 1st and 10 set might be a little bit different than a 3rd down or long set, okay? Different set angles based on defenders' alignments, right? Where's the defender aligned on me physically in comparison to where the launch point is, okay? What type of an angle can I work? Different set angles or set things based on my skill set. What am I bringing to the table? Some guys who are a little bit longer, right? Longer arms, longer legs. You have certainly tackles. Set angles are a lot different than guards and centers. Generally speaking. Right. Your tackles. You want the tackle's main priority in drop back pass protection is to maintain the width of the pocket.
Right.
Okay, so you're not getting collapsed upon. And then the guards and centers, their primary focus is to maintain the depth of the pocket, so you actually have a pocket to step up into. So that changes your set angles and maybe the aggression that you're setting with, that type of stuff. Are you seeing a lot of twist games? Is it, the team you're getting ready to play, are they I would say if there's hair, skin, and crap flying all over the place, sometimes you got to set more vertically and let things pass off, or allow the games to happen so you can pass them off and you're not getting off levels. So there's a lot that goes into it. But we try to. Here's the other thing too. Now let's leave it with this. The last part about this is this: at some point, there's one thing that's going to happen on every single offensive play. What is it?
Ball's dead.
The ball's going to be snapped.
Oh, snapped.
The ball's going to be snapped, right? So I say all that stuff, but then at some point that ball's going to be snapped and the guy's got to play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you can't have it where the guy's overthinking and it becomes paralysis by analysis, like my golf swing. You know what I'm saying? Where you start thinking about too many things and you can't do anything. Okay? So, but you want to provide them with tools to be able to solve problems. Whether it's in the run game or whether it's in pass protection, to be able to solve problems on the field and provide them with the tools to do that. That's kind of what my role is.
With your younger guys, knowing that you're bringing in guys that have combined for over 100 starts, how much do you want to see a competitive spirit out of your younger guys who might not be ready to play right now, but you want them to push the older guys and not just be okay with being second string, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's nobody that will be comfortable when it comes to if you get comfortable being a second team guy or a third team guy, if you're comfortable in that, if that's then go somewhere else, because I want guys that are pushing each other to continue to develop. Just like you should never get comfortable if you're the starter, quote unquote. Okay, I want, if I'm the starting left tackle, whoever my backup is, I want that guy pushing me in practice every day to bring out the best in me. Right? I don't want a guy behind me that's non-competitive. I want the guy behind the left tackle to say, hey, I'm trying to take his job. And I'm going to compete for that, because here's what will happen is eventually, right, whether in a situation that maybe is, whether it's by injury, okay, or whatever, all of a sudden that second team guy, everybody in the building's counting on him to do his job. And if he doesn't prepare like the starter every single day, when that moment comes, he won't be ready. And now it might be because of graduation, right? All of a sudden the dude in front of you, maybe the guy in front of you is an All-American left guard and you're the backup left guard, and he graduates, because they're all going to graduate eventually. He graduates and you haven't prepared for that moment with every rep that you've taken in practice. When that moment arises, you won't be ready for it. So we always talk about, you got to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. How do you stay ready? You bring your best to practice every day, because that moment is going to come. And then all of a sudden, it might be in the middle of a game where it's like, boom, something happens. It's like, hey, you're in at center. And now the whole program is counting on you. are you ready for that moment? You know, and that is a challenge when you are a quote unquote backup player, right? Is that you have to prepare like a starter, and then during the spring, you know, I always tell, hey, control what you can control during the spring, right? So what do you control every day? You bring your attitude, your effort, your attention to detail to practice every day. Just bring those three things, right? And if you bring those three things, everything else will take care of itself. Don't worry about who's running with the ones, who's running with the twos, how many. It'll all take care of itself. If you bring a great attitude, great work ethic, and great attention to detail, and then go and put your best on film every day and see what happens. You know, because it might be where you come in and, you know, one guy is the incumbent. We don't have any incumbents right now. You know what I'm saying? We have no incumbents. But one guy's, you know, got some reps to him, and then you're the backup. If you just approach it as it, you'll never compete to take the job. But you got to bring that competitive spirit every day, you know, in order to be ready also when your time comes. So,
one of the good detail on pass protections, your inside zone run scheme. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's our day one install. The first thing that that's what our whole program, our whole offense is built on, is the inside zone play.
How'd you get to that?
That's just the foundation that I've been built upon, I guess. You know, you go back to when I first started coaching offensive line. I was at Clemson in 1999 with Coach Tommy Bowden was our head coach. Rich Rodriguez was our offensive coordinator. Ron West was our offensive line coach. And that's what we believed in then. And, you know, we went to West Virginia, where Rich was became the head coach at West Virginia. I worked 6 years at West Virginia. I was a tight ends coach at that time. Our offensive line coach is Rick Trickett. And I know you guys are real familiar with Rick. And, you know, Rick was an inside-outside zone guy. Probably if you ask Rick, you know, what tree he kind of grew under or fell underneath, whatever, it'd probably be the Alex Gibbs tree. And I would say I would be similar in that regard. Although, you know, I think, you know, Jim McNally has been a real influential coach in my, you know, development from philosophically as well as, you know, technique and fundamentals. Bob Wiley, you know, guys like that you just learn and you develop, you know, your mentality, your identity. And then when Coach Malzahn and I and Coach Norvell, when we first got together at the University of Tulsa, when Gus and I were co-coordinators, and Coach Norvell was our grad assistant. I mean, we were inside, outside zone, and then we were power, counter, and buck sweep and the gap scheme stuff. That was what Gus kind of cut his teeth as a coach, running more gap game. I came from the zone family, if you will, and when we got to Tulsa, we married the two. And you know, and the zone. The reason I love the inside zone is because there's a lot of variety. There's a variety of ways you can run it. Okay, the fundamentals remain the same up front. There's a lot of window dressing that you can put on the play. You know, there's a read element into it as well. When you start talking about zone read principles, whether you're reading a defensive end, whether you're reading a second level defender, throwing an RPO off a second level defender, you know, there's a lot of ways that you can read the inside zone. And then, you know, the best part about the play is that when you're putting hats on hats, okay, as a defensive coach, and I coached defense for 8 years as well. When you're putting hats on the inside zone, and it's, you know, it's not the 50-yard run that beats you. It's the 4-yard run, 6-yard run, 5-yard run, 8-yard run. and it's over and over, and it's like, it's hard to stop, and it's a downhill run. It's not sideways, right? Which, look, I love perimeter run too, right? When I say sideways, outside zone schemes, we love running outside zone. It's a very good complement to the inside zone play. We run some power read things, which get into your speed sweep concepts, where you're getting the ball on the perimeter, so the ball is moving sideways at that time, but you can have some real explosive runs off of that. But what it's all built upon is the downhill nature of the inside zone play. I think in the NFL, if you looked at, like, there's always a big debate amongst O-line coaches and aficionados, however you want to put it, about what's the difference between what most people would call inside zone and then other people call duo, right? There are some very small, intricate, very important differences between those two plays, okay? But from a philosophical standpoint of it being a downhill run where you are able to double team at the point of attack, dent the defense at the line of scrimmage, and move people vertically, that's what those two plays are built upon. Duo is more in the gap family, if you will, and inside zone is in the zone family. But it all starts with that mentality of running downhill, being physical at the point of attack, and then everything's built upon that.
So let me follow up on that. How do you practice that? How physical are your practices to get simple?
Oh no, they got to be physical. You can't have a physical run game and then not be physical in practice. You're going to practice reps, practice performance is going to dictate your game performance. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. And so, everything's got to be predicated on that. Everything's got to be predicated on your mentality in practice every day. We're going to have a physical downhill mentality. That's our identity, right? And that's who I've been as a coach, and that's who I know Coach Malzahn, as a coordinator. He and I, going back a long time working together, we both believe in that. And I know that's what Coach Norvell believes in, and he's the tip of the spear with everything. So he wants to set the identity of the entire program, and wants that physical mentality.
What type of drills are important to get that?
Oh man, every day we will have some periods. We do EDDs, everyday drills. Okay, so we'll do periods in practice every day where that are built upon the skill set, the techniques, and fundamentals that you would do in an old school board drill. Okay, where you're coming vertically off the ball and trying to again knock the defender back, and that's more. Here's our philosophy on the inside zone. I would like this too, okay? We have to win the one-on-one blocks, okay? So when it's man versus man, we want to win. Now, what does a win look like, right? Some people think in order to win, you got to take a guy and roll him back 5 yards and pancake him. No, if you do that, you're dominating that guy, okay? A win is for me to come off the ball and strike a guy and just reestablish a line of scrimmage. And if I move him back half a yard or a yard, that's a win. If I displace my defender and get him out of his gap, or maybe he doesn't have great gap control, that to me predicates a win, right? So we want to win the one-on-ones. We want to dominate double teams. Okay, so what do you have to do in order to do that? Well, it starts out with your one-on-one block. So we spend a lot of time in practice in what people would consider a version of an old school board drill, which is man-on-man, pad up. Now we're working angles, but it's still one-on-one blocks. We're not just coming off and banging heads together. That's ignorant. Okay, what we are doing is working our angles on our base blocks. Okay, so but we do it with the fundamentals of what people would consider a board drill. Now we can teach that a variety of ways. So we have different tools. I call it the playground, right? Where you get different sleds out. You can work those skill sets. Okay. We can work it man versus man. We can work it, we can get with Coach Knighton and go O-line versus D-line. You're still working the same technique and fundamentals, okay? So, but we're going to do some version of that every day. And I like to have drill variety so the drills don't, I always tell the guys, if we're doing a board drill, how are you spelling board? B-O-A-R-D or B-O-R-E-D, right? I don't ever want the drills to become boring, but repetition is the mother of all learning,
Right.
okay? So there is repetition in it. Well, I can control the presentation of that repetition by changing the drills up where it stays fresh with the guys, but they're still working a similar skill set, okay? So we're gonna do some kind of variety of that every day. We're gonna work on double teams every day, okay? Because when we can, and I know from a defensive perspective, what the defenders are trying to do is they're trying to eliminate the opportunity for old linemen to double team down linemen, right? With movement, blitzes, run blitzes, where you have to get off the double team a little bit faster, so you can't double team down linemen. Because when you can set a double team on a 3 technique or on a G or something along those lines, and well, that's where we want to be able to dent the defense and really get some movement. Okay, well, in order to do that, you got to work it. So I'm a big Crowther sled guy. I love the Crowther sled. We're going to be on the Crowther sled probably just about every day. We'll spend some time on the Crowther. We work our combination blocks, where the O-line is servicing the O-line. But the best way to block, to learn how to double team somebody is double team a defensive lineman. And the best way for a defensive lineman to learn how to defeat a double team is to have 2 O-linemen double team his ass. Right. And then he's got to try to defeat it. You see what I'm saying? And that's where it becomes meat on meat, bone on bone, and let's get after it. You know what I'm saying? So that physical aspect of it is going to be a cornerstone. And those are the types of drills that we're doing every day to try to develop that mentality and develop the identity.
Changing gears a little bit, I know, ideally every player you recruit, you want to be long, athletic, smart. If you're taking a bit of a project guy at any position, is there sort of one thing that you prioritize looking for a guy that you think you can work with and turn into a starting caliber player?
Well, you want that type of guy. You want them to have some type of an elite characteristic.
Right.
Okay. So, if somebody's lacking some in another area, but they're elite, they have to be elite in something, right? Well, one of the things that maybe they have an elite love of the game. If you had to tell me there was one thing that does a guy love football,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Now, you could love football and you're 5'2" and 135 pounds and you're not going to be able to play offensive line. You know what I'm saying? But but if you were saying what was one characteristic outside of the measurables,
right?
Okay, do they have an elite love of the game? And because if they do, then they're going to have the willingness to put in the work to become elite at everything else.
Gotcha.